The envelope trembled in my hands as I sat beneath the humming lights, the courtroom colder than any winter I remembered from the Kansas plains. Across the aisle, my daughter adjusted her blazer like armor. 15 years ago, she left 3 sleepy boys on my porch and said she would be back before sunrise. The sun kept rising without her. Now her lawyer said the word that tasted like rust. Kidnapping. Judge Avery leaned forward, the years etched into his face like dry riverbeds. Mrs. Carter, he said, you have been the sole caregiver since the children were very young. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. My voice sounded steady, but my fingers remembered hospital plastic and midnight thermometers, and the way a small hand can search for a mother who is miles away. Behind their mother, my grandson sat together, taller than the pew, shoulders touching like they always did when they braced for impact. Daniel locked his jaw the way his grandfather used to when a storm rolled over the fields. Marcus held his hands, knuckles white, every bit the peacemaker he had been since preschool. David studied the floor as if it could swallow the noise. They did not know yet what I carried in the manila paper I had smoothed and refolded through 1,000 nights. I did not look their way. If I did, my heart would beg me to run. Counsel, the judge said, lowering his eyes on my daughter's attorney. You allege denial of access. The lawyer's voice came like silk over broken glass. My client was unwell. Postpartum depression, untreated trauma. She is seeking immediate custody and the filing of criminal charges. I watched my daughter's chin lift at the word custody, as if the syllables themselves could build a bridge over 15 silent years. She had always been beautiful. Beauty can be a mask that convinces people to hold the door. Your Honor, I said, I have something to enter into the record before we speak of charges. The bailiff approached, and the courtroom smelled faintly of lemon oil and old heat. When the judge took the envelope, a hush settled even over the radiator's sigh. The paper rasped. A photograph slid forward, the first of many. I kept my eyes on the bench. If I watched the boys recognize their own childhoods, I would not make it to the end. This is a hearing, not a memory book, the attorney said. Sit down, counsel, Judge Avery replied, his tone iron under velvet. We will see what truth weighs when it is placed on the scale. I folded my empty hands together and breathed. The truth was heavier than grief, and I had brought it all. The boys shifted, breath held, as the past took the stand today. Judge Avery adjusted his glasses, and for a long moment, the only sound was the soft rustle of paper. He pulled out the first photograph and studied it closely. Daniel, missing his 2 front teeth, smiling wide on his first day of kindergarten. A lunchbox held proudly in his small hands. Another photo slipped free. Marcus at the county science fair, cheeks wet with tears of joy as he held up a ribbon that said, first place. Then David, 7 years old, wobbling on his first bike without training wheels, his arms thrown around my neck in triumph. These are not souvenirs, Judge Avery murmured. They are records of a life lived. I straightened my back against the hard bench. Every milestone, Your Honor, every parent-teacher conference, every scraped knee, every fevered night. The lawyer cleared his throat. Your Honor, childhood memorabilia does not override parental rights. My client suffered from postpartum depression. She needed time to heal. 15 years of time? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Tell me, how much healing does it take to make a phone call on Christmas, or send a card on a birthday, or ask if your child made it home safe from the hospital? My daughter's face twitched, a shadow of guilt flashing before the mask returned. She crossed her legs and leaned back, her nails tapping against her thigh in measured rhythm. The judge set the photographs aside and reached for the next stack. Report cards, everyone tucked neatly in plastic sleeves. His eyebrows furrowed as he'd read the signatures at the bottom. Mine over and over, filling the space marked parent or guardian. Medical records followed, a thick folder of them. Vaccinations, hospital admissions, dental surgery, all signed by me, all listing me as the emergency contact. "And how often does the mother's name appear here?" Judge Avery asked. "Not once, Your Honor," I said. The words cut through the quiet like a bell tolling. The lawyer tried again, his tone pleading now. "Sitchin, Mrs. Carter kept the children from their mother. She manipulated them, made sure there was no contact." I lifted my chin. "That's a lie." My voice did not shake. "She visited twice, once when they were 8, to ask for money, once when they were 12, to stay 3 days before disappearing again. Ask them if they remember more. You will not find it." The judge's eyes swept over the courtroom, lingering on the 3 boys, sitting stiff and silent. He tapped the edge of a report card against the desk, thoughtful. 15 years is a long time to erase with excuses," he said finally. I clasped my hands in my lap, fighting the ache that lived in my lower back from nights spent in hospital chairs. That ache was my proof too, but the boys still did not know about the most dangerous secret I had kept, the insurance policy that explained why their mother had returned at this very moment. And though the envelope was nearly empty, the real weight had not yet been revealed. The silence in the courtroom grew heavier, as if every breath were waiting for the judge's next words. Judge Avery placed the report cards down and leaned forward, his lined face grave. "I have heard the guardian, but now I must hear the children themselves." My chest tightened. The boys stiffened in their seats. 3 young men pressed together, as they had always been since the night their mother lavabed them on my porch. "Daniel," the judge said, his voice gentle, "you are the eldest. Stand and tell this court what you want." Daniel rose slowly. At 17, he was nearly a man, broad-shouldered, his father's jaw etched into his face. Yet when he spoke, I could still hear the small boy who once begged me to leave the hall light on. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady but rough, "we don't really know her." He nodded toward Rachel without meeting her eyes. "She's our mother by blood, but in truth," he hesitated, and his brothers held their breath with him. "In truth, she's a stranger." The words struck like a hammer. My daughter flinched, her mask cracking for the first time, her lips parting as if she had been struck. "But," Daniel continued, "we would like the chance to try. We're not little kids anymore. We can handle disappointment if it comes. We just want to know for ourselves." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The lawyer leaned toward Rachel, whispering fiercely, but she did not move. She kept her gaze fixed on the floor, perhaps afraid to meet her son's eyes. Judge Avery nodded gravely. "And you, Marcus?" Marcus stood quieter than his brother, his gentle face pale. "I don't remember her voice," he said softly. "I don't remember her smell, or the way she laughed. But I remember Grandma sitting by my bed when I had asthma attacks. I remember her sewing Christmas pajamas when money was tight. I just don't want to lose that." His voice cracked. "But I'll try, if that's what's fair." The judge gave him a small nod and turned to the youngest. David pushed his glasses up his nose, his nervous habit. His eyes were wet, but his voice was sharp. "She left. That's all I know. Grandma stayed. That's all that matters. But if my brothers want to try, then I'll try too." The 3 boys sat again, their shoulders brushing. A unit, a wall. Judge Avery's expression was unreadable. "Then it is decided," he said slowly. "A trial period, 2 weeks with their mother, to see if a relationship can be rebuilt. At the end of those 2 weeks, the court will review their wishes, and my judgment will be final." The gavel struck once. The echo rang through me like a crack of thunder. I kept my head high, but inside I was breaking. 2 weeks, 14 days, that was all it would take for everything I had built to be tested. And the boys still had no idea why their mother had really come back. That night the house was quiet, except for the hiss of the old radiator. I set 3 mugs of hot chocolate on the worn coffee table, just as I had every night for 15 years. The steam curled upward, sweet and familiar, but my hands trembled as I lowered myself into my chair. The boys gathered on the couch opposite me, knees pressed together, eyes shifting between one another. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. "Grandma, you're shaking." "I'm fine," I whispered. though the lie clung heavy in my mouth. "No, you're not," David said, pushing his glasses higher. "You haven't been fined since court." His tone was sharper than usual, cutting through the silence. Marcus reached for his mug, but his gaze never left me. His empathy had always frightened me because he saw too much. "Please," he said softly, "tell us the truth. Why now? Why is she suddenly here after all these years?" My chest tightened. I had carried the secret for months, but it felt like a weight that had grown claws, tearing at me from the inside. Slowly, I rose and walked to the kitchen counter, where the manila envelope rested. My fingers traced its worn edges before I returned and sat across from them. "She didn't come back because she missed you," I said, my voice breaking. "She came back because of money." The words hit them like a stone dropped in water. The ripples showed in their faces. Daniel's jaw clenched, Marcus's shoulders hunched, David froze like glass about to shatter. I pulled out a folder separate from the photos. "Your father, God rest his soul, took out a life insurance policy before he deployed overseas, a substantial one. It was written so the funds would be released when you turned 18, and your mother is still listed as the beneficiary." The air in the room thinned. Daniel was the first to find his voice. "How much?" "Enough to pay for college," I said. "Enough to start your lives without debt. Enough that your mother decided to reappear 3 months before your birthdays." David whispered, almost to himself, "She's only here for the money." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "All this time, she didn't even call. And now, this?" I wanted to reach for them, to gather them into my arms, as I had when they were small and frightened of storms. But they weren't children anymore. They deserved the truth, even if it broke them. "There's more," I said carefully. "6 months ago, she filed paperwork to have me declared unfit as a guardian. She waited until now to serve it. If she'd succeeded, she would already have control of the insurance money." Daniel stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His voice was hard. "So the trial period isn't about us at all. It's about cashing in." The hot chocolate on the table had gone cold. Outside, the street lamp flickered against the winter night. Inside, the truth had changed everything. For the first time, the boys saw not just their absent mother. They saw the depth of her betrayal and the clock ticking down to their 18th birthdays. The next afternoon, I walked into the Rosewood Cafe, the same little place where Rachel used to sit with her textbooks, sipping soda while I worked the evening shift across the street. Back then, she called me Mom, not Margaret, not like a stranger. I chose this place deliberately. I wanted her to remember who she used to be before she turned her back on 3 toddlers who cried themselves to sleep. I slid into the corner booth, the one with cracked vinyl and a view of the door. My palms were dry now. Fear had burned away, leaving only a cold clarity. At exactly 2 o'clock, Rachel arrived. A cream-colored coat draped her frame, her hair shining with the kind of salon gloss that costs more than I spend on groceries in a month. She moved like someone who believed the world owed her space. "Mom," she said as she slipped into the booth opposite me. The word felt rehearsed, like she had practiced it in the mirror. "Rachel." I kept my tone neutral. She ordered a skinny latte, oat milk, extra foam. Of course she did. I stuck with black coffee. Some things never changed. The boys seemed confused. She began lowering her voice. "You've been filling their heads with your version of events." "Facts don't need versions," I replied. She leaned forward, that same coaxing tone she used as a teenager when she wanted money for new shoes. "I was sick. Postpartum depression is real. You should understand. I couldn't handle 3 babies alone." "You couldn't call once in 15 years?" My voice was steady, but inside I could feel the heat rising. Not one card, not one birthday message, not a single visit, except when you wanted something. Her face cracked, just for a second, before the mask slid back. "I want to make it right now." I pulled a folder from my purse, thicker than the one I had shown the judge. I spread papers across the table, like tarot cards. "Do you recognize this?" A credit card statement, nearly $15,000 that is spent on spa treatments in Cabo. That same week, Marcus was in the hospital with pneumonia. I called every number I had for you. Oh. Her lips parted, color draining from her cheeks. I slid another paper forward. This is your bankruptcy filing dated 2 months ago. The same week you had me served with custody papers. Interesting timing. Rachel's hands trembled against the edge of the table. You hired someone. A private investigator. My last $1,000, well spent. The final paper hit the table. A marriage certificate. Robert Hastings. 3 years ago. He's not just a boyfriend, is he? He's your husband. The one currently under federal investigation for wire fraud and money laundering. Her composure shattered. What do you want from me? She whispered. I leaned in so close she could smell the bitterness in my coffee. Leave, withdraw the petition, go back to Seattle, and disappear. If you don't, I'll take every document, every photograph, every secret you've buried, and I'll hand them to the press. For the first time, Rachel looked small. And I knew then she understood. I wasn't the mother she had once manipulated. I was the woman who had raised her sons, and I was prepared to protect them at any cost. The phone rang before dawn, its shrill tone yanking me out of the first solid sleep I had managed in weeks. My heart lurched the way it always did. 17 years of being the emergency contact, conditioning me to expect the worst. I fumbled for the receiver, whispering, "Hello, Mrs. Carter?" The voice was clipped. Official. Detective Sarah Lewis, Seattle Police. I'm calling regarding your daughter, Rachel Hastings. I sat up, the cold wood floor pressing against my bare feet. What happened? She was arrested late last night on charges related to her husband's financial dealings. Wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. She's being held without bail until arraignment. For a long moment, all I heard was the faint hiss of the line. Then, she asked us to notify you. She wants you to contact her attorney. My chest tightened. Even from a cell, Rachel was still negotiating, still reaching for leverage. Detective, I said slowly, tell her I received your message. Then I hung up. Through the thin apartment walls, I heard the boys stirring. Marcus humming softly in the shower, David grumbling about calculus homework, Daniel's careful footsteps in the kitchen. They had no idea yet that their mother's face would be plastered across the news before the day was out. Boys, I called gently, tapping their bedroom door. Come sit in the living room. We need to talk. They filed out, hair damp, shoelaces undone, concern etched in every expression. She was arrested last night, I said, voice steady. Charges connected to her husband's company. Daniel's brow furrowed. So it's true. She only came back because of the money. Marcus swallowed hard. Is she going to prison? Most likely. David pushed his glasses up, eyes flashing. What happens to us? Nothing changes, I said firmly. You're almost adults. This is still your home. Your future is yours, not hers. But they were too smart for comfort. Daniel stood, pacing, his hands clenched. Grandma, when you left to meet her, you looked different, determined. Did you know this was coming? I held his gaze. I gave her a choice, to leave quietly or face the consequences she created. She chose the latter. So you destroyed her, David said quietly. The words hung in the air, heavy as a gavel. I braced for condemnation, for the horror of 3 young men realizing their grandmother was capable of ruthless strategy. Instead, David's mouth curved into a sad smile. Good, Marcus nodded, tears glistening. You protected us again. Before I could answer, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. Her lawyer. He wants to trade custody rights for you, paying her defense. I reached into the drawer, pulled out a document I had drafted weeks earlier, a formal refusal of responsibility for Rachel's debts, along with a ledger of every cent I'd spent raising her sons. I set it on the table. She is worth nothing to me now, I said quietly, and I will not spend another dime saving her from herself. The boys sat in silence, but their eyes held the same fierce recognition. For the first time, they fully understood. I had not only raised them, I had fought battles they would never have to fight, and I would keep doing it, no matter the cost. 6 months later, I stood in the corridor of the federal courthouse in Wichita, Kansas, watching through the thick glass as marshals led Rachel away in handcuffs. The orange jumpsuit clashed with the arrogance she once wore like a crown. Her head bowed now, shoulders small. The jury had needed less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. Her sentence: 2 to 3 years, with the faint possibility of parole. I should have felt triumph. Instead, what settled inside me was something quieter, like the heavy calm after a storm tears the branches from the trees. The courthouse steps buzzed with reporters. One thrust a microphone toward me. "Mrs. Carter, how do you feel about your daughter's conviction?" I looked directly into the camera, my voice firm. "Justice is rarely satisfying, but it is necessary." When I arrived home that evening, the apartment felt strange, too small for the love it contained. A stack of mail waited on the counter, but what caught my eye was the envelope with Daniel's handwriting. Inside was a letter that made my knees buckle. "Grandma," it read, "you have given us everything. It's time we give something back. Don't argue, just accept." 2 weeks later, I learned what they meant. The boys pooled their share of the insurance policy and purchased a house, a real home with 4 bedrooms, a wide kitchen, and a backyard big enough for the garden I'd always dreamed of planting. When they handed me the keys, I couldn't speak. Daniel grinned, tears in his eyes. "You sacrificed your whole life for us. Now it's our turn." Marcus added softly, "This is where we want you to rest, to breathe." And David, always the direct one, pushed his glasses up and said, "Besides, we need space for Sunday dinners when we all bring our families someday." The following week, they gave me one more surprise. Paperwork signed and notarized. They had legally changed their last names. Carter, my name. "You've been our mother in every way that matters," Daniel said. "It's time the world knows it." I wept, not just for the honor, but for the circle finally closing. Rachel had lost her freedom, her dignity, her sons, and I had gained what mattered most: 3 young men who understood the true meaning of family. That night, as I unpacked boxes in our new home, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The lines on my face were deeper, the gray streaks in my hair more visible. But my eyes shone with a light I hadn't seen in years. I had not just survived, I had built something unbreakable. And the boys, my boys, had chosen me as theirs forever. The smell of garlic and ginger filled the new kitchen, drifting into every corner of the house. Marcus stood at the stove, teaching David how to fold dumplings the way their grandfather once had. Daniel sat at the table with his laptop open, drafting an article about grandparents raising abandoned children. His voice carried across the room as he read lines aloud, strong and sure, the voice of a man determined to tell the truth. It was Thanksgiving break, the first holiday in our new home. Laughter bounced off the walls, mixing with the clatter of pans and the scratch of pen on paper as I wrote a grocery list. The chaos felt like music, every sound proof that the years of sacrifice had not been wasted. My phone buzzed on the counter, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened the message. "Please," it read. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need to try. The boys are my children too. Rachel." The room blurred for a moment, the words cutting like old glass. I showed the screen to Daniel. He read it once, then met my eyes with steady resolve. "What do you want to do?" I looked around at the kitchen, at Marcus guiding David's hands, at the refrigerator plastered with college letters and family photos, at the table where Daniel's words carved new legacies. My heart was full, overflowing. "Nothing," I said, deleting the message. "She had her chance. She chose money. We chose love." Daniel nodded, and for a moment his eyes softened. "Then we're done carrying her weight." That evening we gathered at the dining table, plates piled high, candles flickering against the windows. The boys insisted on going around, each one saying what they were thankful for. Marcus spoke first. For Grandma, who never left, David followed, pushing his glasses up with a shy smile. For second chances, not for her, but for us to build something better. Daniel's turn came last. He reached across the table and took my hand. For family, he said. The kind you choose every day. Tears blurred my vision as I looked at the 3 young men I had raised from abandoned toddlers into men of courage and character. They were my sons in every way that mattered. Rachel's punishment was not the prison walls or the orange jumpsuit. It was missing this: the laughter, the love, the warmth of a family bound together not by convenience or greed, but by sacrifice and choice. As I watched them argue playfully over the last dumpling, I felt a peace so deep it startled me. Justice, I realized, was not about revenge. It was about staying when others ran, giving when others took, loving when others could not. The lesson was simple, but it had taken a lifetime to learn. Parenthood is not proven by birth. It is proven by presence. And in choosing to stay, I had given my boys everything. And they, in turn, had given me forever.